It is March 23rd, 2026, and just 48 hours after threatening to drastically escalate the war in Iran with attacks on the country's power plants, President Trump is now claiming that those threats were made while negotiations were ongoing, that there have been productive talks, that we could even see a deal to end this war within the next 5 days, which would coincide with his latest deadline. Iran says those talks never actually happened and that it's Trump once again backing down as he desperately tries to keep the stock market from falling too much while trying to keep oil prices from rising too high. But what does Trump's rhetoric tell us about the current state of this war as the US loses yet another F-15 fighter jet, as they run low on interceptor missiles, as Iranian ballistic missiles rain down on key cities in Israel? And if the US is seeking talks, if Trump is desperately seeking an exit ramp from this war, at least for now, what is Iran going to agree to? What are their terms when it comes to a potential end to the current conflict? And how can they ensure that this is not just a temporary pause and that the US doesn't turn around and attack again? Well, we got into all of that and more with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is veteran war correspondent Elijah Magnier. Elijah, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here, as I know that we are now on day 24 of the US and Israel's illegal war of aggression against Iran. And President Trump is now postponing his own deadline for planned military strikes on Iranian power plants for another 5 days, claiming that Washington and Tehran had productive talks over the weekend and we could soon see an end to this war. The only problem with that is that Iran's foreign ministry says that those talks never happened. And instead of agreeing to negotiations, Iran has threatened Trump right back, noting that they would retaliate accordingly and would completely close the Strait of Hormuz. So, how do you view the current state of tensions? And do you think that Trump's statements are evidence that he got a bit of a wake-up call? Is this about him trying to calm down the stock market and the oil prices, or is there more to it?
Indeed, he before the opening of the market, he made his statement, and suddenly the market calmed down. But when the Iranians said, "Well, actually, no, it didn't happen," then the market went up again. And after that, the Iranians pulled out any information from Tasnim and the Iranian newspaper and agency who said it didn't happen. Therefore, they keep quiet about it. But the animality is somewhere else. 48 hours ago, Donald Trump said that he gave an ultimatum to the Iranians that he's going to bomb all the energy and infrastructure in Iran. And today he's telling us that 48 hours ago, he held negotiation with Iran and they have come up with 15 points in the last 48 hours. But that is not unusual for Donald Trump to say different things in one sentence. That is normal. However, we understand now that the Americans are doubling down on bombing Iran energy and infrastructure because the Iranians proved honest and trustworthy when they said, we are going to retaliate against the nuclear side energy, oil of any country that's going to bomb us. We're going to bomb any country that offers a platform for the Americans and the Israeli to use their country to attack us. We're going to attack them. So far, they've done it. So when the Iranians threaten to do the same, to turn the complete Middle East into an energy blackout, this is where I think Donald Trump understood actually bluffing with the Iranians at this point is not going to be productive, because the Iranian, and this is the failure of Trump and his administration to understand, that Iran is actually fighting an existential war. There's no room for bluffing. And any damage that is inflicted on Iran, it is severe, with one difference, that the Iranians can absorb it, can live with it, but not the Gulf countries. And Iran is paying the price of spoiling the relationship with the Gulf countries because, according to United Nations Article 3314, they are offering the platform for the Americans and the Israeli to attack them. Therefore, it is the legal right of Iran to retaliate against these countries. And it doesn't say only the military bases in the country, it says against the country, because they are offering to a second country to attack a third country member of the United Nations. So I think this pushed Trump to take into consideration actually another option, but he did not recall back the Marines that he sent, around 5,000 men. He did not recall back all the preparation for invasion or occupation of an island or more than an island, or the A-10 and the Apache that is attacking the coast of Iran, and all the other measures are still in place. However, I wonder what he's going to attack, because all the military objectives have been exhausted by the Americans and the Israelis. And the Israelis are bombing civilian areas, civilian infrastructure, police, customs, schools, banks, hospitals. They really destroying the infrastructure of the state, but not the ruling system, but the state itself. So all the wealth of the Iranians is what the Israelis are destroying, because they really want the Iranian to retaliate against the Gulf countries who are unprotected. Their interception missile system is very poor. The Americans put everything in Israel, and the Israeli interception system is good enough. If we accept what the Israelis are saying, 90%, which is not the case of the Gulf countries. Therefore, in the Israeli mind, they have reached some of the objectives. Make sure that the Arabs will hate the Iranians for a very long time, turn the Arabs against Iran, and make sure that they come closer to the Israelis. And we've seen the effect on the United Arab Emirates, whose leader defined today Iran as a terrorist state.
Yeah, the fact that you come out and say that, and I know you made a post about this on X saying, well, they didn't call Israel a terrorist state when they're carrying out an all-out genocide against the Palestinians. And you look at the situation that the region is in, and I thought it was really interesting because Trump really has this focus on we have to open the Strait of Hormuz, as if you do that and it solves all of the problems that we have here. Well, Iran has noted that it is open, but not for countries that are enemies of Iran. But beyond that, we also have the fact that all of this energy infrastructure has been severely impacted by this war in just 3 weeks. You've got the Financial Times noting that Qatar's export of liquefied natural gas, which is around 1/5 of the world's supply, will come to a halt in the next 10 days. You also have The Economist describing the situation by saying even the best case scenario for energy markets is disastrous, noting that if the war ended tomorrow, it would still be weeks, if not months, before oil production was able to ramp back up in the Gulf, before repairs are completed at the South Pars gas field, or Qatar is able to start exporting LNG again. So, what does this tell us about the position that the entire region is in when Trump keeps trying to downplay the situation and act like it's just about the Strait of Hormuz, but the damage that has been done is putting us in a situation that is going to take years to repair?
Well, you've raised an excellent point. I'm going to start with the easiest one. And yes, you're right. For example, Qatar said an installation that cost 26 billions, we have damage of 20 billions. And the end of the war can be very near or can be far, but at the end of the war, because the war is going to stop, it doesn't mean repairing all the damages that this war has caused. And that is going to leave a mark for a very long time in the Middle East on all countries involved. Now, what is interesting in what you are mentioning is suddenly the entire war is about the Strait of Hormuz. Is no longer changing the regime, is no longer participating in the selection of the Grand Ayatollah, is what Trump said, is no longer allowing people to turn against the ruling system in Iran, is no longer controlling the oil of Iran and the wealth of Iran, is no longer destroying the nuclear and missile program. It's about the Strait of Hormuz. And the Strait of Hormuz, as you said, is not closed. The problem with the Strait of Hormuz, it is closed for the Americans and the Israelis because they have started an unlawful war. However, the insurance companies don't want to allow tankers to go through the Strait of Hormuz because the risk is too high. And this is why the market is going a little bit crazy. Now, today it has settled down a little bit, but the market is on the verge of collapse because everybody knows that Iran can still use the Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea. The Saudis and some of the Gulf countries are still capable of selling some of their oil to Yomba on the Red Sea. If that closes, the world is going to tremble. And we know everything is about economy. So for Donald Trump to say the Strait of Hormuz, it's because he's looking for a way out. If he solved the problem of the Strait of Hormuz, that is actually not a problem, because the moment him and the Israelis stop bombing Iran, the problem of the Strait of Hormuz will be solved. However, not the war will not end because Iran doesn't want a ceasefire. As Donald Trump said today, and he understood the lesson, he said there's going to be a lasting ceasefire for a very long time. So actually, he's adopting the Iranian demand, and one of the first conditions that a ceasefire cannot be accepted, but the end of the war would guarantee that this war is not going to pick up again. And we have seen how Iran, in 6 to 8 months, managed to refill itself with so many missiles and conducting a war of attrition that Iran thought it might last for many years. This is why there is an economy in the missile, but not stopping of sending precision missile. Now, it's going to be very complicated because Donald Trump said he's going to accept anything that he would say, and he will impose it on Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu said, we do not accept a bad deal, which means he will accept a deal made by Donald Trump. However, the Iranians will not stop the war without including the entire Middle East, and that includes Lebanon and Iraq. So we're still not that close from the end of this war because there are still main elements that are not solved. And we know that the Israeli Prime Minister main campaign was about him becoming a superpower in the region and achieving the objective. But so far, he achieved 0 objectives. He did not destroy Hamas. Hamas is still alive, in control of the part of Gaza that is not under the Israelis. Hezbollah is still active. On the contrary, is launching more missiles than Iran on the Israelis, is stopping more than 4 divisions in the south of Lebanon that are trying to occupy a very small, tiny area. And we talk about 4 divisions, talking about 40 to 50,000 men equipped with all the drones, the missiles, the artillery, and the air force. So all of that requires a lot of negotiation. But again, negotiating with whom? With Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner? They are incompetent. They are a state dealer. They know nothing about the technicality of the nuclear program. This is why the British were there in Oman during the last negotiation, and the British said, well, there is a breakthrough, as the Omani foreign minister who acted in between and go between the Iranians and the Americans, and they all said Iran offered something that never happened before, not even in JCPOA in 2015. But Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who do not take any notes, who understand nothing about the technicality of the nuclear program. I heard him. He doesn't even know how to pronounce the enrichment uranium and what are the advanced IR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He doesn't know anything about them. Well, it is all about them. And it's all about the quantity of uranium enriched and the percentage and how Iran can have a small percentage. They come and they want to know yes or no. It doesn't work in negotiation, either yes or no. And it led them to a war because they went back to Trump and they said Iran is not honest because Iran didn't say, yes, I agree, I submit to you and everything you're saying. They are very limited in their negotiation. So again, this is not the end of the war. At the beginning of the negotiation, but we're still negotiating under fire.
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely good to keep in mind, especially as you have Trump in this position where he's claiming, oh, it can be wrapped up by the end of this week, or, oh, he claims that he's back to Witkoff and Kushner negotiating. Exactly as you said, Iran's not going to accept that. They don't want to have to deal with these two idiots that just got us into this war to begin with, let alone negotiations with a party that they know that they can't trust. And I know one of the things about the last 3 weeks that has been exposed to the world is just how bad the US military is at fighting an actual war. Because according to Central Command, they are more accident prone than ever before. I mean, the video going around of the F-15 fighter jet that was shot down over Kuwait, they're insisting, no, it was just a malfunction. And they have similar excuses, whether it be for the radar systems damaged, the MQ-9 Reaper drones taken down, the refueling tankers, the F-35 that just happened to get shot down out of the air, even though it's supposed to be this grand stealth fighter jet. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in damage that the US has sustained in a matter of weeks, and that's not even taking into account the years of ammunition that they have used in this war. So when it comes down to the position that the US is in and how much longer, not only can it continue in this war, but can Israel and all of these Gulf monarchies compared to what Iran has prepared for, and as you were noting, this prolonged existential war that they are ready to fight. How do you view the position that the US and Israel are in here, and really how desperately they actually do need talks to try to get some sort of a pause on this war before it gets even worse than it already is?
Good point. Now, there is a reality here. The war that these Americans conducted against Afghanistan, at the time of the Mullah Omar, he decided to leave Kabul. And this is how the Americans managed to occupy the capital, but did not submit Afghanistan because after 20 years, they gave back the power to the same Taliban they started to fight against. The war in Libya. I covered the war in Libya and I was there and I met even with the son of Gaddafi and all the responsibles. And they were convinced that the war is going to end at the end of August and all that was a theater. And they never understood that was a real war to topple Gaddafi and to create a havoc in Libya. So the Libyans did not fight against the Americans and against NATO. They thought this is going to be over soon. And before that, the Libyan allow the Spaniard, the French, and all the Western countries to come in and inspect their missiles, their nuclear program. They gave up on it immediately because they want to give security and assurances to the West. So they fought a country that was not willing to fight. In Iraq, Saddam Hussein was completely crippled in his economy and the will of the army to fight back. So they went to Iraq and it was easy to control the country when to a point that Saddam was falling from the inside. They did not need to send troops. And this is another war that I covered on the ground for 9 years, since 2003. So they are now facing a country that is much less powerful than the American, that is stronger. They have the strongest military in the world. And the Israelis, they have the strongest military in the Middle East. But they are facing a country willing to fight back with a strong ideology and a battle of survival, willing to accept hits and many hits, because if the Americans have conducted 15,000 attacks and the Israelis 8,000, you can be sure they've dropped many tons of explosive on Iran. But you see people going in the street. Iran is 1,648,000 square kilometers. You don't see really this damage. As I went to the suburb of Beirut, and before that, I'm told the total of building damage are 400, and that was a big number. But there are 25,000 buildings in the suburb of Beirut. So you really need to look for these buildings, to look where they are and to understand, well, actually there was a war there. So if a side that is ready to fight back, they're not going to win. And this is why the Americans, when they accept to talk, and they've been advertising that we are willing to talk, and the Iranians are saying, we don't want to talk. We don't want to talk to whom? Because you are part of the problem, not the solution. So that means Benjamin Netanyahu, because we know a golden rule, America always asks for a ceasefire when Israel is coming to an edge and coming to a term of the war. Now, we have seen how the interception of missiles has been reduced, and they asked for $680 million bomb from the Americans. But what about manufacturing enough interception missiles? What about Iran managing to do like it hit Dimona and Ard in the last 2 days? In one missile, 175 casualties in Israel. So all that is building up and eating up what Benjamin Netanyahu can claim as a victory. Because, first of all, Israel has bombed all of the objectives that it had in its bank of objectives. Secondly, they crippled the Iranian economy. And if there are sanctions on Iran after the war, Iran will not find it that easy to reconstruct everything. Third, they hit many of the missile program and the missiles warehousing. Not all, obviously, because Iran is fighting back and is still fighting at least between 10 to 15 missiles and drones per day. Therefore, there is a lot of stock, and Iran is launching missiles from the middle, longer range missile, rather from the edge, very close to Iraq, to reach Israel faster and from a shorter distance. So when there is a ceasefire, look for Israel. It's not chercher la femme, here look for Israel. And Israel wants to end the war, and Donald Trump will never go and stop the war without Benjamin Netanyahu asking him. But Netanyahu is not going to say it. Netanyahu cannot say, I asked for a ceasefire. But the ceasefire now has, as I said, many problems. Is Israel going to stop the war on Lebanon or not? Iran is not going to stop if Israel will continue the war on Lebanon. The war in the Middle East has to stop. That's a request of the Iranians formulated by Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, and I don't think Iran is going to change that.
Yeah, that's also a really important point, and I'm glad that you bring that up because the last thing I wanted to get into was the state of Hezbollah and its continued war, not only on Israel, but you also have Hezbollah in this position where they're having to fight back against the US-backed Lebanese government that apparently doesn't understand that Hezbollah is the only thing standing between them and a full-on Israeli invasion. So when it comes to the overall state of the axis of resistance, I know that, in the aftermath of the genocide and the assassination of Syed Hassan Nasrallah, there were a lot of people that said that the axis of resistance as a whole is done, that it's not going to be rebuilt. How do you see the resistance right now, especially when it comes to Hezbollah and the role that they are now playing in truly making sure that Israel never has a day of rest?
I'm glad you asked these questions. Since the last 3 weeks, and we are in week 4, we did not hear Benjamin Netanyahu bragging about killing Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah anymore. because he saw that eliminating a leader did not actually change the strength of Hezbollah. And because Hezbollah waited for 15 months, giving the opportunity to the Lebanese government to use diplomacy that the Lebanese government claim is the only solution to deal with Israel, and failed, Hezbollah was extremely clever in starting and engaging the war with Israel, while for Israel, the main objective was Iran. And we have seen the result. And why I'm saying clever is because the bulk of the bombardment of the Israelis is going toward Iran. They're not sending bombs, they're not bombarding Lebanon as they did in 2024. They're more concentrated on Iran. So the calculus of the Hezbollah was excellent, and strategically was really the right time to walk in, get involved into this war, because Israel is going to come sooner or later, and then link itself to Iran's ceasefire, but at the same time receive less damage than Iran and less damage than 2024. So the Israelis were forced to fight on more than one front, and this is what happened. Secondly, during the 2024 war, the killing of the first and the second level of leadership created huge confusion with Hezbollah. Inevitably, because it's a secretive organization, the Hezbollah leadership, the new staff that came in from the top to the lower rank, were not in contact with the leadership to receive the proper decision to fight back. Those who were fighting still were those responsible for the geography in the south of Lebanon that do not need orders to stop the Israelis and engage with them. But the decision to fire against Tel Aviv or Haifa needs the top level in the echelon. And the top level was not in contact with everybody else in the missile system and the missile unit, from the long range to the mid-range missile unit. Therefore, in the last 15 months, Hezbollah prepared for this war, with or without Iran, and waited for the right moment when Israel was really doing all the effort possible and all the military resources to attack Iran, and sneaked in. That was an excellent move. Now, what Hezbollah is doing is exactly what Hezbollah did in 1980s and in 2000 and 2006. They are engaged with the Israelis. Sometimes they have a static defense line. Sometimes they have kinetic defense line, allow the Israeli to come in and then they fight them back to inflict more damage and more casualty. That's the guerrilla warfare. Now, the government decided to consider Hezbollah as outlaw just days before the beginning of the war. And for Hezbollah was a really tough decision. If they do not start a war with Israel, that's going to start it anyway, then the Lebanese army will start chasing and arresting them. And at the beginning, I heard many people who are anti-Hezbollah were saying Hezbollah is weak, defeated, we need to take back the control of the government. And now they say something completely different. Now they are saying, well, we were surprised. We didn't understand that Hezbollah was that strong. We did not know that Hezbollah has such quantity of missiles to fire back on Israel. We did not know that Hezbollah had the will to confront 4 divisions on the borders. And in the last 24 hours, we heard the president who gave the orders to the Lebanese army to withdraw, who gave the orders and approved and pushed the government to consider Hezbollah military branch as outlaw, yesterday said, condemned the Israeli attack and said Israel is violating the Lebanese sovereignty. He's suddenly waking up, because Lebanon is no longer going to be before these 3 weeks like after the 3 weeks. After the 3 weeks, Hezbollah has a lot to say, and the Lebanese government will have to listen, change the laws, and make sure to take into consideration that is dealing with a force that the Lebanese army cannot do what this force is doing, did not pull out and replaced the Lebanese army position, then the Lebanese army withdrew because it is incapable of fighting Israel, but Hezbollah is capable of fighting Israel. So who is the mad person who's going to order the Lebanese army to fight a force that is doing the job of the army and can fight Israel when the Lebanese army can't? This is why there's a new rule of engagement that is going to be imposed on Lebanon after this war. And what Benjamin Netanyahu, I'm not cynical here, but he relieved Hezbollah when he ordered all the Shia to evacuate the south of Lebanon and the suburb and the Bekaa, because this is when Hezbollah said, okay, I was concerned about my people. You asked them to leave. Now I have nothing to lose.
Yeah, and they did, Hezbollah they tried to work with this ceasefire. Israel violated it just about every day. And exactly as you said, Hezbollah didn't go back to war with Israel immediately. They waited until the time is right. And now we are seeing as Israel is in a position where it's having to deal with all of these attacks. It's having to deal with a lack of interceptor missiles, and it is bringing this war to a very pivotal point. I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Veteran war correspondent Elijah Magnier, thank you so much for your time and insight.
It was a pleasure, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. And it's also now available on YouTube memberships and over on X subscriptions. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you right back here soon for more updates.